Yes, Oasis, we know we owe you $5,000 for using one snippet of the song. Blood and Black Rum Podcast presents Captain Marvel. Hey guys, welcome back to the Blood and Black Rum Podcast. I'm Ryan from Cultsploitation.com, and I'm joined with my co-host Martin.
How's it going?
And we're back with an episode directly after our Leprechaun 4 episode, our St. Paddy's Day episode, that they're kind of swapped here. St. Paddy's Day episode was a little 1 week before St. Patrick's Day actually became a thing, and
I'm pretty sure St. Patrick's Day has been a thing for hundreds of years.
That's true. And our new episode is kind of the opposite schedule, but it had to be that way because of
someone's going on vacation.
Yeah. Well, that and theatrical releasing just made more sense to do it that way. But you get 2 weeks of Blood and Black Rum podcast, so
Just like the old days.
yeah, good for the listeners. That's what I like to say. So we're back because obviously we put ourselves through all of the new superhero movies that hit the theaters, whether it be DC or Marvel.
Since Civil War.
So we obviously had to cover this one as well. And we're talking about Captain Marvel. The new film that everybody loves to hate. Or at least men love to hate. Men on the internet.
Which I was thinking about, because I think before Endgame I'm going to finally watch them all.
Mm-hmm.
After I was looking at it, because it was on Netflix the other day.
You mean you're going to watch like Iron Man 1 and 2 and 3 and the first Thor?
I've seen half of them now, so it's 10 out of 20 films. That's right, we're up to 20.
You got a lot to go here. I actually think I'm probably at the same, right? I really didn't see anything.
No, I think you're at 12.
Oh, because they got the Guardians of the Galaxy films in there. So yeah, that's true. You didn't see the first Ant-Man either.
No.
So I'm at 13.
13. The only other one I've seen before Avengers was Captain America.
Oh, actually, you know what? I'm at 12. Because I did not see the original Avengers. Are you counting that in there? Yeah. So I'm
counting all 20, so I've seen 10 of them. The only earlier one I've seen is the first Avengers and Captain America, which I barely remember because it's been eons.
But Captain Marvel is coming to us directly before Endgame, somewhat weirdly before Endgame, because they're leaving themselves the span of basically a month to get Captain Marvel in and then Endgame as well.
But they did the same thing last year with Black Panther.
Yeah, they did.
Black Panther came out, and then like a month and a half later, you had Infinity War.
Isn't it kind of surprising that it's been like a year already?
I was looking at like my movie ticket stubs. I was like, Ragnarok was like 2+ years ago.
Yeah, it's kind of surprising that it's already been a year since Infinity War.
Here we are. The thing is, I think with Black Panther, they weren't expecting Black Panther to be as big of a hit as it was leading into Infinity War. Don't think it's working that much for Captain Marvel, because I think with Captain Marvel, they were more expecting better response than what it's been getting.
Actually, it's gotten a pretty good response.
I'm not talking about critical response.
Sure. But I mean, it did have a great box office opening.
Well, at this point, if you've been, watching these movies, it's like...
The reception has had a bunch of trolls that have come out from the woodwork and said, you know what? I don't appreciate a woman in my superhero movie.
It's kind of the Ghostbusters treatment.
Yeah, and
not nearly as,
vitriolic as...
Wow, that was the word I was going to use.
That's right, yeah.
But it's not nearly as bad, but... I was reading on just like articles and stuff, how like Rotten Tomatoes had to shut down the rating because people were rating it without seeing it and all this other crap, and I just don't understand it. If you see the premise of it and you're like, pah, propaganda, feminist, bullshit, just don't go see it.
Yeah. Yeah, the crazy thing is that people have now devoted like hours and hours of their lives to shutting this film that they're not going to see down.
And look, I got news for you too. It was pointed out by another review. I saw Red Letter Media's review, after, because I like watching the reviews, and I've mentioned them several times on the podcast, but they made a good point, though they weren't big fans of the film either. But they pointed out, a $1 billion company like Disney is going to be making a film with all this feminist propaganda shit. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
What's their job? They want to make money. How do you make money? Appeal to the broadest demographic as possible.
Wasn't the same complaint kind of lodged about that Star Wars movie?
Because they're casting all different,
right? Like because they're getting I guess females in more powerful roles.
Look, there has been a transition over the past couple of years with diversifying cast and main characters to be more inclusive.
Yeah.
Hollywood has always, for the most part, especially for the past 30 years, been very openly liberal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If
in certain ways,
in this case, like Brie Larson has been, very openly, like when she was talking about A Wrinkle in Time, saying like it's not made for 40-year-old white people. She's got a point. Wasn't made for that demographic, but doesn't mean as a 40-year-old white person,
right?
You might not.
That's not what she was saying anyway. She was saying that it
wasn't made
for you specifically
and she was also saying it as like to the critics' response, because what are most film critics for? Older white gentlemen reviewing films, but that doesn't mean they can't see. It's not like me or you can watch like a Sweet Sweetback's Badass Song and be like, well, it wasn't made for me, so it's not. I think no, you can still appreciate it for me. That's a very revolutionary film.
Yeah.
There's a lot of nuance to it, but there's a lot of people, nuance these days is kind of lost.
Yeah. Yeah, this film in particular, Captain Marvel, I think, got a lot of backlash, for one, because people misused Brie Larson's quote from A Wrinkle in Time to make it about Captain Marvel, which is completely not true. So if you're seeing that quote flying around, that I have. That Martin just mentioned that it's not made for 40-year-old white men. Well, that wasn't even made about Captain Marvel. So I have seen a lot of people attribute that quote incorrectly about Captain Marvel, and for one thing, that's not true. For the other thing, Brie Larson has been pretty outspoken about making sure that women are going out to see this and making sure that younger girls are.
Which is the same thing that was happening too last year with Black Panther.
Yeah.
For, be like, hey, we have a black superhero, finally being represented.
Absolutely. I think it's super important, and it's like, oh, I'm sorry that they're not targeting you specifically to go out. Like, they know this, 28-year-old white guy is probably going to go out and see a Marvel movie. They don't really need to market to you directly. Like, do we really need to have them say, like, yo, guy who reads comics and, has seen all the other Marvel movies, you'll like this one too. We made this one for you too. No.
It's already a very hardcore lockdown. No, it's the same thing like video games. I agree, like when you hear like people with with video games, like women and such complain about there not being a broader representation. Thing of it is, for the most part, for 40 years, there's been one specific demographic. GTA doesn't pander to certain demographics. That's what
sure.
Granted, we're starting to
we're getting into that, and
I have no. Personally, if I were play a role playing game, and you have somebody already kind of like with The Witcher.
Sure.
If you had with The Witcher, it's an RPG, but it's already a set character, but they happen to still be a black woman, it wouldn't bother me.
No.
Just immerse yourself into
absolutely stupid to be bothered by it.
But I can understand. The point I was trying to get with the whole video games thing is just it's you're starting to finally kind of broaden the demographic, but you can't. But at the same time, it's you can't really argue that because their target demographic has always been younger males, and the same thing with comic book movies. For decades, it's been young men. Now it's
we're expanding it out, and part of that too, I think, comes from the whole idea of it becoming the zeitgeist. And that it's
part of pop culture.
They're sort of hesitant to now give the reins over to other people. Like, other people can like this too. They felt like they were an inclusive group of people who like the same thing, and they don't want the public at large to be a part of that group. And so I think part of it too is that they just really don't want to give up that sort of outsider, nicheness to it. But
again, I can't stress this enough. It's not like it's being done also for it's this brave Disney's so progressive. Again, They're doing it to broaden the demographic.
Absolutely.
To make money.
Yeah. That's like, for first and foremost, like, I could say that, Disney might have a little bit more progressive tendency, but at the same time, they're not coming out and saying, like, we're going to do this. They're not making, like, the Spike Lee's Black Klansman for Marvel movies. That was certainly not the intention. The intention was not to, like, subvert anything. It was more so, like, if we can make a film that's more inclusive, that will draw more people to it and sort of promote it that way, we're going to make a shit ton of money on that. I'm not saying that that's either a good or a bad thing from Disney's perspective, but we're like basically arguing from the troll standpoint that there's no way that a troll can come out and say, like, Disney made a feminist movie from this
and it's not even that, like, strongly.
No.
Like, it's not.
And not that there's anything wrong with making a feminist movie. I'm just saying that Disney was not the one who was coming out and being like, it's a feminist movie. We're marketing it as such. It just definitely was not that.
It's not. You could argue the Terminator and Terminator 2 are much stronger.
Yeah. Aliens.
Because, it's not your stereotypical, like, oh, no, girl, woman in distress. It's, especially by Terminator 2, Sarah Connor's a fucking badass.
My favorite
thing. In Aliens, Ridley the entire time, badass.
My favorite thing about that is that people that were trolling Captain Marvel did tend to point out, they're like, I do like the Terminator, I do like Aliens, I just don't like Captain Marvel. It's like, okay, well then you have legitimately no logical
You can like it for not being, if you think it's not a well-made film,
which
absolutely. This film does have a lot of problems. And for as much as, and we'll get into it, for as much as I think, spoiler, we both enjoyed the film, for as much, as much as we enjoy it, it's still a very flawed film. It's the same thing when we reviewed the remake of Ghostbusters. It wasn't there's women involved, so that's why, it's a bad, it wasn't that great of it was enjoyable, but it wasn't that great of a film because of how it was made.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't even know that I would say for Captain Marvel that I found it to be particularly flawed, but just, there are some problems with it, obviously, just like any other Marvel film, and probably more so because there have been 20 Marvel films at this point. You're starting to see the seams in having the same sort of ideas in every single Marvel film. And also, if you look at what one of the best DC movies that came out, Wonder Woman, there are a lot of parallels between Wonder Woman and Captain Marvel as well. So more of the flaws come from the fact that we've already seen a lot of this before, and now the same type of themes crop up again and again.
It's just a different scenario.
Yeah, and giving it a different scenario. Now, I think, one of the complaints about Captain Marvel was couched in the fact that Captain Marvel is originally a guy in the comics, and that they decided to change.
Carol Danvers is, from what I understand, has been Captain Marvel
for a while.
Not just for a while, for a very long time. Even longer than... the original.
So
what does it matter?
I also agree too. Yeah, that's a stupid.
I think I'm pretty sure Wally West was the Flash longer than Barry Allen, but you don't see me complaining about. I grew up with Wally West in the Justice League cartoon. Why did we get fucking Barry Allen in the movie? Bullshit.
I totally think that's a stupid complaint. Another complaint was basically just about Brie Larson in general, and outside of the movie context. And at that point, like, I agree that Rotten Tomatoes has every right to remove every single fucking negative review that was posted before anybody could have even seen the film. Absolutely. Ridiculous. That somebody devoted hours of their time to fucking make an account, write a fake review, and post it to Rotten Tomatoes is just super sad. That's
what happened with Ghostbusters.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and it's completely sad. And I was like, devote literally anything else of your time to something else, and you'd be a little bit less of a sad person. So if you made an account and made a review for it and didn't see the movie and said you didn't like it for whatever reason,
I don't understand
we actively dislike you. I actively dislike
I don't understand how someone could be like yelling suppression, my speech.
Yeah.
You didn't see the film.
You didn't see the movie.
Shut the hell up.
Or
You're speaking out of ignorance.
It's the same thing when you go on Yelp and you've never been to the place.
Right,
and
no,
you
like
give it one
bitching,
star.
yeah.
And you're like, yeah, I've never been here, but it doesn't look very nice from the outside. Or something like that. You give it 1 star.
Or if you're like our friend who likes to bandy about the word hole, like the terminology hole in the wall, and it's like that's using the
same thing.
Yeah.
So, just I guess in our intro, we were just pointing out that we're not any of those people who are like Captain Marvel, woman bad. If anything, I want to see Brie Larson and things in a skin tight suit. Why don't you want? if you're a young 20-something male.
Young 20.
Straight male.
Bump that up.
Sure.
Yeah, you're knocking on 30.
Well, yeah, but I was talking about the other demographic for Marvel films. And at the same time, too, I said, well, you don't need a Captain America that's male and then a Captain Marvel that's male. That's just overkill at that point. You can't have 2 captains being fucking male. It's just too much.
Why not just have Chris Evans play both of them?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, just completely pretend like it's not related
He's
at all.
relinquishing his... Yeah. He's given up the role of Captain America at the end of Endgame to be Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
He's moved on to bigger... He's moved on to the, space.
Yeah. So, all of that to say that we're not some of those trolls who immediately hated Captain Marvel for whatever reason. So we gave it a nice fair shot when we went to go see it. And I don't know, should we go right into the review or do we have beer to talk about? Are we going to
we'll
have
just
anything?
Fucking go
right into it. That's right. Let's just get right into it. So the first things first, Captain Marvel, nice thing that I noticed about Captain Marvel is that it's only 2 hours and 5 minutes long, which is sort of a truncated version of the Marvel film. Normally they're reaching up 2:15, 2:20, 2:30. This is a nice...
Showed some restraint.
That's right. This is a nice, restrained 2 hours and 5 minutes. I still wouldn't call it brisk. It's not a quick gallop through this film, but it certainly is in the right direction, because I don't think that every single Marvel film needs to span 2.5 hours. It's really overkill, and for a character like Captain Marvel, I think that 2 hours is plenty of time to get to the point. Perhaps even maybe a little bit too long. Which is
what I said at the end. I'm like, Once again, there's a bunch of stuff they could have cut down and truncated to make it streamline more. I really like the opening, the Marvel credits.
Oh yeah, the Stan Lee
because tribute. As we know when they do the Marvel credits and zooming in, you see like the past films of it. Going through each letter, but this time they had every like Stan Lee cameo, and had a dedication to Stan. That was really nice.
It's a nice touch, yeah, for sure.
Seeing as it's his last appearance, in a film before.
Definitely a nice touch. I thought it was. I definitely wasn't expecting it. I think they kind of even kept that. I didn't really see anything about it, before Captain Marvel released. No one ever posted anything like "You're gonna love the Stan Lee intro," which I think would have ruined it a little bit, because you kind of want everybody to go into that and just see it and then be like, tug at the heartstrings a little bit. But that was a great moment, a great tribute for him. So that was definitely necessary in the runtime, I believe.
Yeah.
Well, actually, you know what? I'll start out, as we're talking about the beginning of the films, I'll start out with one thing. The trailers in our screening of the film were completely out of place in terms of a Marvel film, because most of the time when you're seeing a superhero film, you're seeing superhero trailers before it. So you would have expected maybe an Endgame trailer, maybe a Shazam trailer. No, we got all fucking live-action Disney films and Frozen 2.
Nope. By the way, sidebar here. Who honestly is fucking excited for Aladdin live action?
Yeah.
Lion King with super realistic CGI that looks like it's going to be a shot-for-shot remake.
Apparently everybody who loved the Jungle Book live action film.
Nobody did.
I saw it. It wasn't bad. I certainly didn't think it was bad. But yeah, you're right. I don't know that Lion King shot-for-shot remake is necessary.
What did you think
although Jon Favreau is doing it, so I do have some expectations from Jon Favreau. No. He did direct one of the best contemporary Christmas films of all time, Elf. So,
I mean, seriously, it's just, you really can't just pop in The Lion King for your kid and be like, here's
Here's the real version of it.
This is what I saw as a child.
Yeah.
You know, they're just gonna like go down the entire Disney rides. Next year we'll get Pocahontas and you know, actually no, they already did announce the live action Mulan.
Yeah, they did. Yeah. Just everything.
Fucking stop.
Yeah, I'd say, just to say that the trailer selection in our film was really out of place, really weird.
I literally have no interest in seeing any of those Disney, and I didn't even see the first Frozen. You know,
you weren't interested in that one.
Dodge that bullet.
Yeah.
And now too, fucking good old Pixar's creatively bankrupt too for the past 5 years because all they do now is sequels. For the longest times they wouldn't do sequels, and now all they're doing is sequels.
So, getting back to Captain Marvel, one thing I do want to start with too is I read a few reviews that were saying that Captain Marvel was sort of difficult to get into as a film if you don't really know about the character Captain Marvel from the comics, and I completely disagree with that. You get everything you need to know within the film itself without really needing to know anything about the background from the written comics.
And I do have a little bit of knowledge about the Kree and the Skrull from playing Marvel's Ultimate Alliance. Because there's when you go to it's either a Kree or Skrull planet, and you're like as you're doing in the like
doing something with
them,
yeah,
and you're fighting and involved. So,
but I don't think like I never thought within this film like I was out of place or like I was missing something about Captain Marvel's background that wasn't within the film that you got at some point that they explained to you. Because I think that Captain Marvel's, the identity of Captain Marvel and Carol Danvers, I think is actually pretty interesting. How they go back and forth between her having this sort of amnesia about who she is and thinking that she's one person and not, and then, you know, also being another person.
See, this is where I'm going to disagree with you.
You think you didn't like that part of it?
It's as cliched and stereotypical as you get for like a origin story.
True.
Every time I see a story about like where the main character is just like, I keep having memories of these things about my past, but I just can't remember. I can just think of like every cliche like shonen anime under the sun where like you have 3 arcs of them like, who am I? You don't want to know who you are, but who am I? And that's what this is.
Yeah.
It's just, and the fact that they have these intermittent flashbacks and sometimes done very poorly, like the whole part where she's being mentally interrogated by the Skrull and see that is just like nauseating to like watch like that.
Them like it's sort of like
having the flashbacks and then you got them like woo, like you know like they're fucking on Deep Space Nine like oh it's this word
they're using like a memory camcorder almost.
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, the one thing that I didn't like about that though is that
because like they're gonna know like what is she doing? Oh, she's at a bar on Earth with her Guns N' Roses shirt singing, you know, some pop song with her friend. Oh, yeah. Ooh.
Yeah.
You know, it's just...
No,
I don't care. I really don't care for that. Not only that, too, when you get in the intro with her training with Jude Law and him being like, "Did you have dreams? I had dreams. What were they about? Same thing as usual. They're going to hold you back. You must, you know." It's like, yeah, wow, way to telegraph right from the get-go. Yeah. Asshole right there, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that part of that issue is with the source. I mean, obviously, they have to stick to the source for the most part with Captain Marvel as a character. So that some of those problems just come directly from the source of the comics being Captain Marvel.
Doesn't make it excusable.
No,
it's
but
still just
you're
not
barking up the wrong tree with the movie itself, I think. That's all.
I'm not saying I'm holding a great grudge against it, but I'm saying that it's something that just comes across as very tacky. And
at this point, you know, as we do all these origin stories, it's inevitable. All of the origin stories tend to be very similar. If you look at Captain Marvel's origin story, when she actually becomes Captain Marvel, rather than just being, you know, Carol Danvers, the great pilot, it's fucking Spider-Man, or it's any of those characters who were accidentally in the wrong place at the wrong time, and they got
strange.
Yeah, they got splashed with some shit.
You're right. It's just more. I honestly don't really care for this this is me just personally. I don't care for the story arc of amnesia protagonist who has flashback memories and is trying to figure out who the hell they are. And that to me is just, I mean,
definitely has
comes
been done.
across as more lazy than anything.
I didn't-
At least with Doctor Strange, it's like, I'm a hotshot surgeon and playboy and no, I'm just a maverick and and I
True.
got an accident and my hands are crippled and I meet a Chinese mysticism. It's a little bit more.
That's a little bit out there. I do agree that as a regular character, Carol Danvers isn't that interesting of a person to elicit anything like Doctor Strange does, where he does have like an iconic identity. He's really super rich and everything. Carol Danvers is just like a normal person who's also
been ripped out of Top Gun.
Yeah.
Which,
normal
to be
person
fair,
in Top Gun.
And to be fair, another. No, I don't want to get into it yet because it'll be something touchdown down the road. I don't want to go too far from what we're going. But anywho, the overarching plot of this film is Carol Danvers is in a special force with the Kree, which from reading other stuff, I didn't know they're in the other Guardians films. The Kree have already appeared in the Marvel films.
It does sound familiar.
But she's part of the special task force, as part of an elite unit to hunt down the Skrull, which is an enemy of the Kree, who the Kree think are going to wipe them out and wipe out all life.
And they've been colonizing like other areas of the solar system. Basically.
And so they're a special unit she's part of a special unit to exterminate the Kree.
Yeah.
And then after that, we have the special unit try to attack a certain target to get to a VIP. It goes wrong. She gets thrown down to Earth during this whole hullabaloo and ends up in 1995 LA. Shenanigans ensue.
Yeah. I think that one of the elements that really doesn't work so well within that setup for the plot that I wish they probably had left out a little bit is Jude Law's character.
I was gonna say the space unit because they're the worst commando unit ever.
True.
Jude Law is like the worst commander in the world. He's just like, we're gonna go do that. Don't do that. No, shit. Things are going wrong. I'm just going to watch.
Yeah, but the bigger issue for me is Jude Law's character as a whole, because at the beginning of the film, it's pretty telegraphed that this guy is not going to be the good guy that we're made to think he is, and he has a secret.
Agenda.
Yeah, exactly. This guy he's got a British accent. He's fucking going to be the bad guy.
Which, don't you think, after all these things, too, if we hadn't learned from, any of these things, wouldn't it have been just better from the get-go to be like, hey, I just want you to know, these visions you're having, it's because of this. And this is why we did what we did.
Yeah.
Don't you think the protagonist would be more like,
oh, okay, yeah. That makes sense.
But then why? And it's like, look, I know we took you away from your home, but the only way to save you was to,
Yeah.
To frame it like that, not be like, you don't want to know, like having Tim Meadows and fucking Walk Hard be like, you want no part of this shit, just be forthright,
Yeah, and I mean, this is basically just like Aquaman, that there's a secret they don't really know about, and then obviously because that character knows that there's a secret, they're working even harder to figure out what the secret is, and so at that point, you would be better off just telling the character, from the get-go, this is what happened. I know it seems bad, but it's really not, and just give them some bullshit example, and they probably wouldn't even think about it.
And they'd be more likely to go along with, and instead of, having it,
In Captain Marvel's case, it's just super clear from the get-go that Jude Law has things to hide, that he isn't the good character that everybody makes him out to be, and to be fair, Captain Marvel doesn't really try to hide the fact that he isn't really a great guy or a great teacher. He's just he's super serious all the time, and And
I think all the Kree are.
Yeah, and it's
and I think that's why they give Brie Larson these moments of levity to be like kind of more like, so what am I supposed to do with these on? You know,
right?
Like these like little quips and shit. But the problem I had, and this is what I was gonna go talk about earlier. Problem I have is Brie Larson's character is way too. I'm too serious and stoic and wooden, and then like I got these quips and witty banter because you know, instead of it being like, it's not like Thor where it's like this nice mix, like, you know, and it free flows and it has like someone's own personality would be, or with Iron Man or Captain America. She's very much at one moment like, I'm wooden and stoic and have nothing to feel, and at another moment I'm quipping these jokes at the bar with Samuel L. You know.
Yeah. I mean, I can see that. I think that for the most part the jokes work that come from her, but more so I think that Samuel L. Jackson's.
I think him as the foil is what makes the funnier, because Samuel is a great actor.
Yeah.
I don't think Brie Larson is that great of an actress.
I don't think she's a great actress, and there were times in Captain Marvel where I did see that.
And I haven't really seen her in anything else off the top of my head. So this is a first impression. Is not doing well. So if I was like one of those trolls, like, you know, terrible film, I guess if I actually watched the film, I'd be like, well, who the fuck is she to say, you know, if, you know, people should watch this? Performance, very lackluster.
I mean, I've seen Room that she's in, and she is good in Room. I mean, she basically has to lead the entire film. But
well, I'm saying it from my own
from your own perspective. Yeah, and I'm not sure if that is somewhat intentional from direction, that sometimes they want her to be a little bit wooden, or if that would, you know, because she is sort of when she's part of the Kree, when she's Veer, she is supposed to be.
No, I know,
more wooden.
But my point is she's in the beginning, when she's totally believes she's a Kree soldier, she's very much wooden and stoic, but at the same time, there's not like as they're going on that mission, she's jumping in between being like, you know, like she's James Bond throwing quips after, you know, one after another when she's fighting the Skrull.
Right.
So my solution would be, the direction would be like, Kree, you know, Brie, you're supposed to be like the Kree, very kind of stoic and reserved, because that's what they keep telling her. Because from her vision, you know, her dreams, that Jude Law is saying, you have to control your emotions, you know, control your visions, you know, be centered. But have her actually have an internal struggle. Like, she's trying to be more stoic and clear thought, but at the same time, she show that she's actually playful with her team and all that. Like, she's like, while they're all being like, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, and she's like, oh, what bullshit do you want me to do? You know, something like that. You know, so show that she's actually, you know, has a balance there. Here, like I'm saying, it's too much, I'm the Kree, and then I'm a human Carol.
Yeah.
There's no in between.
Sure.
So you're right. That probably could very well be direction on how they want her to play up certain scenes. Overall, though, I don't think that makes her character as balanced and likable as she very well could be. Again, like, all you have to, like, just do what Thor is. Thor's serious, but he also can crack jokes, and perfect balance.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they, you know, that the part of the issues with the plot do stem from just that it's a little bit too predictable throughout most of the film. And the Jude Law character really, it doesn't resonate that much. Like, as a villain, he doesn't really stand out. And I think it's some of the same issues that it had with that Aquaman had, where it has
he's right up there with Black Manta.
Where it has a character that just doesn't really resonate as a villain. And in this case, the bigger villain is just that the Kree are basically at war with the Skrull, and so the villain is sort of the war. You know, that Captain Marvel has to sort of get in between this war and try to figure out a way to bridge the gap. And I don't even know that at the end of Captain Marvel is resolved enough for us to really feel like the completion of the film is sort of a resolution in itself. We see we see Jude Law's character, we see him sort of taken down, and we see Captain Marvel going into space to sort of help the Skrull, but the actual resolution of this long feud between the Skrull and the Kree is really not solved or anything. It just seems to be left open to, continue on in the next films or whatever they're going to do with Captain Marvel. So one thing that it does stand out about this film from other Marvel movies, though, is that it's set in the 90s. It's got a 90s setting. They're doing the Portlandia thing of heading back to the 90s for their setting.
Where was Fred Armisen?
I don't know. So I guess it makes the film a little bit more interesting because obviously we're not set in either a futuristic mode. We're not like in space all the time, and we're also not in contemporary present day, like Doctor Strange might be. And so it does make for an interesting setting that is different from other Marvel films, but is it really necessary to have Captain Marvel set in the 90s?
Yeah.
Why?
Because we get the backstory on S.H.I.E.L.D.
True.
Part of S.H.I.E.L.D.
That's true.
I know they've been around,
but
I don't know from the movies, but we get introduced to younger Nick Fury as an, not the leader of S.H.I.E.L.D., but just an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., and they don't know damn diddly dick about aliens and intergalactic whatnot.
Yeah, it's interesting because you brought up
correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, you might know. They were introduced either Captain America or afterwards, as an agency.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know much about S.H.I.E.L.D. at all. But you brought up an interesting point in that, what are they actually doing? What is Nick Fury doing before Captain Marvel?
I think it's it has to do with just supernatural stuff, but not.
Yeah, I said it's the division of the X-Files where Mulder was working before he actually got into the full supernatural element. It's sort of the same premise of that.
Because, like I said, if I remember correctly, and again, if you can yell at me, people, if I'm wrong, I think it has to do with the whole Captain America and Super Soldier Serum, and just kind of as a watchdog agency against kind of like a Men in Black, but not involved in the alien aspect yet.
Yeah, because he does seem in this film, Nick Fury does seem to be sort of not believing Captain Marvel would come from space and that there would be some external alien threat.
Now, how do we know it's the 90s? Because when Captain Marvel crash lands in LA, what does she crash through? Blockbuster.
Yeah, there's Blockbuster, there's Radio Shack.
Which, by the way, what's the bigger dinosaur? Blockbuster or Radio Shack?
Well, Blockbuster has been gone longer.
No, I mean, but what probably outgrew in relevance quicker? If you ask me, it's Radio Shack. The one Radio Shack we had around here was fully funded for its last 3 dying years because of our one friend that would stop by and buy a speaker.
Yeah, I definitely would not utilize Radio Shack very often at all, unless I needed something really strange we were
who was going to Radio Shack in 2005 to get their cell phone plan?
Yeah, no, that's true. Radio Shack was sort of an outdated beast already, going into 2000s, because there's just so many other places that you could get these things from now. And they often had outdated things too. Even Radio Shack would have an outdated DVD player, or they'd still have VHS players when other places were getting DVD players. So yeah, it just never really went with the times. But so one thing about Captain Marvel's 90s setting is that it does play up the very, very generic ideas about what the 90s were.
I think they could have had more fun with it.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, granted, we do get the second best Stan Lee cameo because of this setting.
Right.
Because it's set in 95. We get Stan Lee on the subway as she's stalking one of the Skrulls. And the Skrulls can shapeshift, by the way. They're shapeshifters. That's why they're such a threat, because you don't know if they've infiltrated your system or not because of it. When she's stalking one of the Skrulls on the subway, she's walking through and you see Stan Lee, and they made sure, just in case you weren't geeky enough to know Kevin Smith films, because as much as we love Kevin Smith here on the podcast, kind of an outlier on, He's a niche director. Outside Clerks. So just in case you didn't know that Stan Lee had a cameo in Mallrats, you get to see Stan Lee sitting there with a giant fucking script that sit on the front with the Mallrats font, Mallrats, and he's sitting there rereading a couple of his lines over and over. Then he looks up at Captain Marvel, kind of winks and nods and says hi, and then she keeps going on, and he keeps reading his script. Yeah. I mean, I love it just because it's a Mallrats reference.
Yeah, that's probably one of the most obscure references, I guess, that's in the film. The rest of the 90s stuff is pretty cliched 90s fare. Like, something that you would definitely, like, everybody would know. I understand that in this film, and for the age range that they're going for Captain Marvel movies, they wanted to make things a little bit more accessible.
By the way, too, if you're talking about, like, when we're talking about demographics, like young 20s, that 90s period, fringe. Your sister won't remember.
Exactly. You know. Yeah. Yeah, so I think they wanted to make things a little bit more accessible for their audience. At the same time, though, it does come off as just a little bit lazy in the terms of like what they actually use. So one of the biggest things is that
they went Suicide Squad and
exactly.
plugged in a bunch of 94, 95 songs. So what do we get? TLC's chase, we got Waterfalls. We got No Doubt's Just a Girl, and there's a couple others sprinkled in there that really Nirvana, Come As You Are, which would have been a little earlier, but
Yep, and so really all of those things are pretty much iconic 90s.
The end, you had Hole.
Yep,
Make Me Over. At the end for the end credits,
and I would have just liked to see them go just a little bit more into the rabbit hole of the 90s. That they could have done a lot more reference to the 90s that didn't need to be in your face, this is from the 90s. That could have just been sort of nice touches.
They should have had Samuel L. dressed up as more from Pulp Fiction.
True, and he does sort of resemble him,
but he should have had the full handlebar and afro.
Sure.
And that, like, when they're like, what is, like, talk, like, when they're like, he's like back at like SHIELD headquarters, like asking, like, I mean, I know they're not going to because it's a PG film, but they should have had him, like, someone asking him, like, did she look like a bitch?
I really wish that they had leaned a little bit more into the 90s there.
Is when the scroll see those surfers and copy their look, is that supposed to be a Point Break reference?
I have no idea. Like, again, though, if it was, that's super obscure. That's, like, on the opposite spectrum of saying, like, I think it was just more of a reference to where they are in that sense. But I wish they had leaned in a little bit more on the 90s references and made some of them just a little bit less obscure. Like I said, one of the perfect examples of doing a 90s female-driven film would be to have a Riot Girl soundtrack at least one time. And they just never even, like, that wasn't even a thought process for them.
They just decided, hey, let's just dress Brie Larson up and some flannel and ripped jeans, and then put a 9-inch nail shirt. Hey, call back, you get it, you get it, right? Because out of all the people in the world, that I think, like, hey, you know who's gonna be wearing a 9-inch nail shirt? Brie Larson.
Yeah, and even that they didn't really allow to just sort of resonate with. They actually have Samuel L. Jackson comment on it and say, yeah, the grunge looks good on you or whatever.
It's gotta go.
Right, and so, like, it's not even allowed to just be there without being commented on.
Because, again, as I said, like, if your sister, who's only, 6 years younger than us, it's going to be lost on her.
5, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that's fine that they had some references that were really just cliche, generic 90s references. At the same time, for those other viewers, I really wish, because this is sort of, the 90s setting is completely different from other Marvel films. Like, this is one of the things that really makes Captain Marvel stand out, because if you take the plot, you take the origin story, none of that's really stand out for Captain Marvel versus any other film in the Marvel franchise. The 90s setting is what makes it stand out. So we've seen pictures from Patty Jenkins' Wonder Woman 84. That is really leaning into the 80s references that it has in there. It's, it's got the color scheme, it's got, all of the aspects of the 80s that really stand out, and they're leaning into that. Whereas in this case, if they didn't say it was the 90s, you might not even know, because some of those styles, some of that stuff is already coming back to trend now. So it's really
embedded in trend.
Yeah, it's really not like the 90s style in this film is omnipresent throughout. It's more so just in spurts. Like the beginning part of it when she's crash landing and she comes into Blockbuster and Radio Shack.
That, Samuel's buying driving like an early 90s Oldsmobile when the Shield shows up.
Sometimes I forget how much cars have changed since then, too.
Really? They're a lot more compact and not as big and boxy.
Right. I mean, I forget that even at that time in the 90s, that cars were that...
Or still big and boxy?
were that boxy.
Unless you had like a small compact, like a Neon or a Geotrack.
So that was one good thing. And you know what I was looking for? You know that scene where they're at Blockbuster and you can see the highway in the background? Mm-hmm. I was looking to see, could I catch a glimpse of a car that wasn't from the 90s in that background? You couldn't see it because it was too blurry, but I was looking for it. I was like, I'm gonna nitpick that so hard.
Why didn't they have like See, that would have been you should have said it in 94, have her like as they're doing the chase. This is why I should be a Hollywood writer. As they're doing the chase, like as she's on the subway and Samuel's chasing her down the LA freeway. Breaking news. O.J. Simpson,
sure.
Yeah. You just had to go back one more year, and you could have the O.J. Bronco chase going. You could show like Boys in the Hood in the background.
I would have loved to have just something going a little bit further than just what they did in this film.
I mean, you're right, because after that whole scene where she crashes on Earth and she's supposed to be the fish out of water, and we get that chase. After that, it's like okay, she's on 90s Earth, but outside of like her best friend having Kelly Rowland's haircut and and some other things that they run into, you would totally forget. Like, this is set in 1995.
I did forget.
And again, the only reason it's set that early is because, as we know from the end, she's got she's gonna have to disappear for a long time.
Right, yeah.
Because again, if fucking Nick Fury's assembling the Avengers.
Why isn't he asking Captain Marvel?
Pretty sure Hawkeye's getting, no offense, Hawkeye, but he's getting shit, kicked to the curb.
Absolutely.
And,
for the pretty much unstoppable
Atomic
Captain
Woman.
Marvel.
Yeah.
Because, and that actually segues into a really good discussion about Captain Marvel's powers, because in this film, the beginning, she really doesn't know how to harness her powers. At the end, she's unstoppable.
Well, that's that's something I don't care for, but that's the same thing that happened in Doctor Strange as well. Sure. Mm-hmm. Because Doctor Strange couldn't get his goddamn mysticism shit right, and then after, it wasn't during the fight with Mads Mikkelsen, he got it. It's afterwards, after he beat him and they're wrapping things up, now he's the Sorcerer Supreme, and he fucking knows all. That's something too, that's another cliche and a part, and again, I'm not taking many points off this film for it, because it's something that happens in like almost all of these films, but it's something I don't like, where it's like they go from novice, and then they overcome what they have to, and then they're the fucking,
Yeah. I think what's worse though is that Captain Marvel really does feel unstoppable in this movie, to the point where at the end of the film, where I talked about how there's really not that much of a villain in this film, it's pretty clear that whatever happens, she's gonna win. Like there's no way.
She's the Superman.
Yeah, she basically is. Yeah, she's the Superman of.
She's run on an Infinity, because what happens is she gets her powers from Annette Bening's little time flight machine. And Jude Law makes the end, tracks her down. This is before she gets brought to the Kree. So back in 1989, because we have those flashbacks too.
Yeah.
And it's 1989 because she's wearing a Guns N' Roses shirt. Woo! And the machine that Annette Bening's character Marvel is creating is powered by the Tesseract, which, if you know anything from the previous films, holds an Infinity Stone in it. So she destroys the core, which has the Tesseract in it, blows up, and it gives her powers from the Infinity Stone, which makes her damn near invincible, because she's fueled. Her powers are literally fueled by an Infinity Stone. So, and at the end, through being able to realize who she is, going through her character arc, who she is, and that she won't be held down by Jude Law and the Kree anymore, she's able to fully tap her power and overcome and become God at the end with her atomic, I can fly through space and all this other crap. I don't have a problem with her powers and stuff. Because again, at the end of the day, and this is where I can kind of see people having problems with this film as an idea. Because at the end of the day, now when you think of Endgame, how are they going to stop Thanos? Captain Marvel. She was literally just introduced.
Right.
10 years of fucking filmmaking, and now you're just plugging her in, and she's the one, out of the entire group, not Captain America, not Iron, Granted, I think it's going to have a bigger scope. I think there's going to be parts, from like Doctor Strange, who is dead, essentially now, because he was one of the ones to bite the dust when Thanos snapped his fingers. But I think there's going to be an amalgamation, like Ant-Man, Strange and his prediction, Iron Man and her are gonna, and Captain America are gonna, and Thor are all gonna do something to be able to. Yeah,
I don't think that they're gonna rely specifically on Captain.
Because I mean, if they just relied on her, when we go to watch Endgame and we do that review and it just winds up spoiler Captain, which I'm not saying this is gonna happen, but spoiler, Captain Marvel ends up saving the day at the end. When the Avengers are down and out. I'd be pretty pissed off about that too.
Yeah.
But again, we haven't seen Endgame yet, so you can't make that judgment. Yeah. But from the way this is being framed, it kind of seems, especially from the end credits where we jump to the future, because if you remember at the end of Infinity War, the post-credit sequences, Nick Fury bites the dust, but his pager's going off and Captain Marvel's symbol going off. And at the end of this film, she gives him a pager while she's flying out through space. Yep. To find the Skrull New Home World, if there's any trouble that that needs to be dealt with, that's really serious, use this pager. It can reach several galaxies. You'll be able to get me, and I'll be there. And so, at the end of this film, we jump back to the future after Thanos has won, and the last few Avengers still alive are looking at the damn pager, like, "What is it? I don't know." And then she shows up.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that they're going to I don't think they're going to rely solely on her. I think it's going to come down to everybody pulling together as the
Teamwork.
Avengers should. And it's doing an Avengers thing. I think it's more just, setting her up to be a part of this universe when they move forward with it post-Endgame.
Now, how do you like the retconning? Of, like, the Avenger program being named after her? Because she was the Avenger pilot.
Yeah.
And, when Samuel's thinking of his initiative of basically creating the Avenger Initiative to,
I forget what he was originally going to call it, but there's just
the Guardian or something like that. The Protectorate.
I don't really care. Doesn't really affect me either
way. Captain America is the first Avenger.
Yeah, I don't care. It doesn't affect me either way. Honestly. That really didn't stand out to me.
Now, what makes me wonder is it took him 10 years to get assemble. It took him 10 years to find
to actually get it all together. And
what the fuck was he doing?
Yeah, I don't know. That didn't really bother me, but
I know that bothered some people. I thought Captain America was the first Avenger because that's what they named Captain. The first film was Captain America, the first Avenger.
I mean, I think that you could use it as he got the idea for the name the Avengers, and then literally Captain America was back in
World
Avenger.
In World War II. Yeah, no, that's why I think it's stupid. But there's people pissing and moaning about that.
Obviously, there would be. Yeah. One thing that we didn't talk about is the fight scenes, because Marvel's always known for their fight scenes, and the choreography is generally done by the same people, so they always have the same directorial
fluidity
say over the fight scenes. So what did you think about those?
I thought they're alright. There's not much really. Once she goes full blown nuclear man with her powers and shit, there's not much.
Not much fighting per se.
No, it's just her
punching people around,
flying around. Eviscerating,
literally flying through a spaceship, and making it explode.
Yeah.
So, I think what does stand out though, and is probably an issue with Marvel movies moving forward, is that the choreography is certainly not as creative as Black Panther's or Captain America: Civil War.
I mean, that makes sense.
Both of those fight scene choreographies were a lot more creative visually than Captain Marvel's.
But again, though you're right, and I agree with you, the difference is Captain America doesn't have, outside of having super strength and super healing, he doesn't have superpowers. So you can have these tight, nice fights. Same thing with Black Panther. Black Panther doesn't his Wakandan suit, gives him the ability to fight, at superhuman levels, but it's not like...
Yeah, it's actually
like I said, it's
than...
not, like I said, fucking Nuclear Man just flying through the galaxy, just, laying waste to everything in sight.
One thing that did stand out to me about the fights, though, sometimes is that, and this happens in other Marvel movies, is that the editing sometimes is so flashy and fast that you can barely make out what actually is happening during the fight. And there were a couple scenes, and I'm not sure if it was our theater or if it's the film itself, but there were a couple scenes that were very dark, where you actually couldn't really make out what was happening on screen versus,
like the commando scene where they're like sniping,
exactly.
Like it's the third level,
very, very dark.
It's the third level in Halo when you're trying to get to the Pillar of Autumn. Yeah.
But one thing that does also is something that we can applaud Captain Marvel is that it does not fall into the trap of having one of those scenes at the end where it's just fire and brimstone and
I know.
Clouds of smoke.
I looked at you when she was getting ready to have that fight with Jude Law, and I was like, this can't be a final boss fight. There's sunlight.
And actually,
granted, in Endgame when they have the fight in Wakanda, there's sun, but still,
it's still, and it's going to be it's interesting too because she does do a fight that actually takes place in a computer computer system, which is sort of the opposite of having one of those fire and brimstone fights. It's more digital than anything else. So I thought that was interesting and a change up from some of the other Marvel films.
Commentary.
What's that?
Commentary.
What do you mean?
By having a digital, everything's just CGI,
right,
fighting the system. Yeah. I did like the final fight though with Jude Law. It was just funny. I mean,
because
just like the whole like, oh, I trained you. You're very well done. You surpassed, and then she just bitch slaps him into a can't.
Yeah. It's kind of nice because you do have that sort of villain character who's talking way too much.
Just prattling,
and you wonder why somebody doesn't just be like,
shut the fuck up,
and just end it. And so this is that moment where
she Vegeta'd his ass.
Yeah,
after she beats his ass, just like Goku beat Vegeta in Dragon Ball Z in the first time around. She doesn't kill him. She just sends his bitching ass like, go back to the Kree, let him know I'm around. Poof.
Yeah, it's actually a good moment at the end. My only problem is that I just don't think Jude Law as a villain is very interesting in this film.
Because he's just Jude Law.
Yeah.
He's just like, they're like, play stereotypical angry British man.
Yeah. I wish, and the other thing with that too is that this, though it doesn't have the issues that some of the other films have with overwhelming villain things that happen where they are wasting some of their ideas on this film, there is still that element that could have been cut out with the special Kree guy that has the...
They did waste this whole Skrull Kree war, if you ask me.
Yeah. I mean,
because it could be like a deeper... Like, if that could be like a sequel, like, a constant conflict going on, and it's just like... And again, this is where it's totally telegraphed, too, where it's like, Jude Law's bad, so it's going to end up being... Oh, she's been fighting the Skrull for half the film, and then find out... It's not the Skrull who are evil. It's the Kree.
Yeah.
And they've been manipulating you.
Yeah.
And then you're going to help them.
I mean, one thing that I didn't like, though, that they wasted is that Kree guy with the Kree Guardian guys. The guys with the hoods on and the
mini
guy with
the mini Mjolnir.
Yeah.
I was wondering, like, well, why is Thor there? Like
that was somewhat wasted on this film because that was completely unnecessary. And that was 15 minutes that really could have just been chopped, not needed at all.
By the way, who in NASA is not able to spot a fucking giant fleet come, orbiting over? You don't think, someone
95, so
I'm pretty sure they had a telescope big enough to. Hey, there's
3 giant spaceships coming in.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree with that for sure. Yeah. But
just what this film needed? Needs some Rip Torn. Need some Rip Torn there to be like, shit's going wrong. Deal with it. What'd you think of CGI kitty cat? The Flurkin.
I really didn't mind the cat that much throughout. Like some of it was CGI, some of it was a real cat.
Goose the cat.
I didn't.
That's a Flurkin.
I don't really mind the CGI in that sense. And actually, I think the CGI for the most part in Captain Marvel is pretty well done. It works for the most part. I don't know about maybe sometimes the flying sequences with Captain Marvel.
It doesn't look nearly as... It looks the same as like any other, like with, like Black Panther and all
Yeah,
that
but I don't think it's like there's anything really... Like at this point, we're pretty accustomed to Marvel having much better CGI graphics than DC films.
Well, they better. They have fucking ILM at the
True, yeah. But I thought it looked pretty good. I don't mind the CGI cat at all. And
no, the only problem I had with Goose the cat is the fact... Well, what the fuck's a flurkin?
Octopus cat thing.
Just a tentacle monster thing that, you know...
Yeah, that comes out and sucks it.
My problem is, too, Samuel, who the fuck's like, you're bound to get scratched. You know, that's why you got your fucking eye patch. You act like a dumbass.
Yeah.
Who goes to a cat, who's your kitty, you know...
My cat would definitely scratch your eye out, too.
There's the only cats I've ever known to not be, like, mean, miserable bastards when you, like, pet them is Matt's cat. Our friend Matt's cat. All his cats are what he calls barn cats. Just happy, playful, you know, they don't, like up your ass, but if you just decide to fucking flail them around and pet them, they'll just sit there like, whatever.
Yeah.
Outside of that, every other cat I've run into is a mean, miserable cunt.
One observation I made in this film, though, that I didn't realize is Annette Bening has really got Hillary Clinton look going on.
Oh yeah, no, I was picturing her in a.
Does she always look like that?
I was picturing her in a pantsuit. You know?
She's definitely SNL Hillary Clinton material. She's looking a lot like Hillary Clinton at this point.
Yeah, that was bad.
That was, that was the one thing that stuck out to me. Like, literally nothing else about Annette Bening's character stuck out to me except that she looked like Hillary
Well, she was
Clinton.
just the supreme and
that's it. Nothing else stuck out to me about her besides that.
It was...
Oh, you know what, though? One of the other major issues that I had with those flashback sequences that we mentioned earlier about her flashing back and seeing, Annette Bening's character who had just been mortally wounded in the plane crash that they're in, and now there's a guy coming for them, and in the original flashbacks they consistently show it's a Skrull guy. It's the Skrull shapeshifter that's coming for her. And then all of a sudden later on, when we actually get the real flashback, she sees that it's not a Skrull, it's the Kree and it's Jude Law. That feels like the runaround for the audience, because if that was the case, they should just not have shown the identity of the person. They should have just left it in like the mist and just left it at that, and so you don't know who it is and so they don't have to circumvent and say, actually, she misremembered. It was Jude Law all the time.
I think they should have even just bothered having the whole
right. They have to repeat that flashback sequence like in full twice. So
they did it more. It was like 4 times.
So it's sort of. Yeah,
it's taxing.
Yeah. I think again, those are the moments that add unnecessary runtime to the film, and I do appreciate that they got this one down to 2 hours and 5 minutes. At the same time, I think it could have been cut even more. They could have probably gotten it down to an hour and 50 minutes, and that would have been fine. So that was another scene that just was like, it stuck out to me as sort of giving the audience the runaround on. And then having to circle back and show them opposite things. I didn't like that part of it.
So what'd you think of the soundtrack?
Yeah, the soundtrack...
Not the copyrighted songs. I'm talking about like...
Yeah, you mentioned it in the movie, and it definitely... I mean, I noticed the same thing. All of the spacey songs, all of the spacey soundtracks...
Because it does have like regular orchestral, like action music, but when they're like have like more like outer spacey moments, it goes full blown into like the guys who composed Mass Effect, like
it's like that synthy.
Like I'm Commander Shepard, and this is my favorite shop on the Citadel.
It's like somebody constantly hitting the keys on a futuristic computer. Yeah, I mean, I thought it was okay. There's nothing iconic about this. Whereas I will say with Hans Zimmer's music for like Wonder Woman, that's an iconic score that they created for Wonder Woman.
Well, better be. He's Hans fucking Zimmer.
Yeah, I know. But like in this case, in Captain Marvel's case, if you were to like say to me like, what's Captain Marvel's theme from this movie, I really wouldn't be able to tell you.
But that's like every Marvel film, though. Like all the soundtracks are very bland. I mean, outside of like the whatever copyrighted song they throw in there. They're always just bland, just
that is one
here,
good,
like just kind of to fit the scene, you know.
It's one good thing that DC does in their films is they actually try to come up with a theme for that character. So they obviously have other orchestral moments, but there's also the theme for the character herself or himself, and it's almost like the same thing as having the symbol pop up. That if you see the symbol, you obviously know that's the character, but if you hear the music, that's also the sign of the character. Whereas Marvel, they kind of leave the soundtrack off a little bit. They don't really think about it too much. So yeah, I couldn't
tell you what's Captain America's theme, you know, like
that's one of the things that I think that they could do a little bit better.
Though I do think DC lacks in that too. Honestly, even though it's been like 30 years since like Batman, why can't you throw in like Danny Elfman's Batman theme, or the animated series shows, or like for like Superman, throw John Williams theme, or the animated series show, which I do think the Superman animated theme is much better than John Williams' score. Like even though it doesn't really kind of like fit the like dark and grim tone, it'd be like a nice callback. Like the first time you see Batman like throw a batarang, like start playing like the Danny Elfman theme or something. It'd be nice, like
yeah. I mean,
there's nothing wrong with like calling back. Like that's like a proper callback.
Sure.
Compared to where like where they do other stupid shit that's like it's hit the mark.
All right. Is that it? That's all you got?
I guess.
That's all I got. I'm ready to do the rating.
And then your hiccup.
Yeah. All right. So
out of 10, 9 Inch Nails t-shirts.
Oh, okay. I was gonna do something with Blockbuster.
But that's cliched.
All right.
9 Inch Nails is still timeless.
Okay. So out of 10 9 Inch Nails t-shirts,
I'll give it a 7.
Okay.
It's nowhere near as bad as people make it out to be. It's quite the enjoyable film in spite of its flaws. I do think the whole character trope, protagonist doesn't have memories and just wants to know them so goddamn bad, is a taxing trope on my end, and I don't care for it at all. I don't think Brie Larson's that great in this, and I don't think she's that charismatic and interesting as a lead, though the rest of the supporting cast is pretty damn good. Samuel L's great. Her best friend, which we didn't really talk about,
Lashana Lynch.
I was gonna say Latasha, but Lashana Lynch. She's pretty good, pretty damn good. I don't really. Jude Law is just Jude Law, so I don't really count that. But Samuel L. carries the humor of this film. Surprisingly, this film is more Ant-Man and Wasp in its tone, and than the rest of the Marvel films. Yeah, it's light, but it's a lot lighter than the rest of the films, which is kind of surprising. I thought this would be a more serious and grounded Marvel film, but it is lighter in tone. I do think the plot's kind of just overarching, just stereotypical, with the whole how she gets her powers and all that, and who's her past and all that. But I do think even though it's stereotypical and I don't care for that type of plot, it's entertaining enough. Even with Brie Larson being a fucking log. Like I said, Samuel carries the film. It's not a great Marvel film. But it's nowhere near a terrible film. And even though I would say this is one of the worst Marvel films I've seen, it's a lot better than any DC film I've seen. If this was a standalone science fiction action film, this wouldn't be that great of one. I'd give it probably a 5 out of 10 because it doesn't really have anything to go off of. But as part of the Marvel canon, it's a 7 out of 10. It's an enjoyable watch to set up her as a character in Endgame, which I do think she'll have a crucial part in, but probably not super crucial. But she's gonna be a character that's gonna be lasting after the results of Endgame. So whether you like it or not, when Tony Stark and Captain America are gone, you're gonna be left with Spider-Man and her. So
yeah.
Better get used to it, or that's going to be the death nail in the franchise.
Yeah, I think I would give this an 8 out of 10. I did enjoy it for the most part. I think it's a really enjoyable watch when you're actually immersed in it and you're watching it. I think when you take a step back and think about it, in terms of just it being its own sole movie, there are definitely some flaws with it. I agree that I don't know that Brie Larson was the greatest actress in this film. There are a few moments where she does come off as quite wooden, especially when responding to things. And I'm not sure how much of that was direction, how much of that was, the acting quality itself. But whatever the case, it does come off a little bit wooden in there. I think that Samuel L. Jackson is probably one of the shining highlights of this movie. So anytime that we're going to get more Samuel in a Marvel film, I think that's a plus for everybody. With that said, I do agree that I think that the plot itself is somewhat generic, but I don't really fault the movie so much as I fault probably the source material of Captain Marvel. Maybe they could have done a little bit better to expand on it in a better way and not treat it as sort of like this amnesia moment that the character goes back and forth, I don't really know who I am type of thing. But I think part of that just stems from the source material and they kind of went with that. And the other thing is that if you look at Marvel characters in general or DC characters in general, origin stories, though they have different ideas in them, they tend to be very similar. They all kind of start out the same way, and you can see a lot of parallels within Captain Marvel to other characters, franchises, and I just think that's the nature of comic books, especially in this golden age of comics when they were coming out. They were just, all of these characters were coming out with very similar origin stories, especially when they were like, you know what, we really need a new character. Just give us one. And I actually don't really fault like the writers like Stan Lee or anybody for doing that, because they were doing it at a time where people were like, pump out new ones, pump out new ones, pump
They're
out
still
new
like
ones.
that.
And it's like, what do you want from me? What now? I gotta like write a character that's named like the Toast Man, and he was like, accidentally stuck his hand in a toaster, and he became irradiated with fucking toast hands. I don't know. So I do see the the reason why a lot of the origin stories are very, very similar. But in this case, you're right. In Captain Marvel, it doesn't really come off as being a very interesting origin story. And the same is true of the villains. I have a very similar problem with the villains in this film that I did with Aquaman. That it doesn't really seem like a villain that much, and it's sort of lacking the depth.
Just there.
Yeah, they're kind of just there, and especially at the end of the film, Captain Marvel really has no problems vanquishing the villains. It's like, once she understands her role, she does it with, I said, she literally flies through a spaceship. She literally flies through an entire spaceship. So, there's not much issue there with her, beating up everybody. So other than that though, I did have a lot of fun with it. I'll give it an 8 out of 10. I think it's one of the better Marvel films. Certainly no Spider-Man. And
there's no mercy till that.
Yeah, and it doesn't match Avengers Infinity War. But it's definitely up there for me in terms of one of the better Marvel films that I've seen.
I mean, I guess I agree with your points on like the story and all that, like how it's cliche. I understand all that, and I'm not taking super amount of points off for it. But at the same time, too, you gotta think it's the 20th fucking film. Mm-hmm.
You gotta expand a little bit, or get a little bit more creative with how you're doing.
Even because again, it hasn't stopped them from. Yeah. It's not like they're doing all this stuff right directly from source material. Yeah, otherwise, Infinity War would have Thanos pissed off because Death doesn't like me. She's with Deadpool. Blah, blah, blah,
I see your point in that you can use the source material and do a completely different creative way of. They got to get a little bit more creative in the plot structure. The structure itself of the writing. It goes exactly the way that you would expect it to. She's this person. She finds out that she's,
not that person.
Yeah, she might have something else going on, and then somebody double betrays her, and then she figures out, this is how I do it. That's like the MO for every single superhero movie that's come out. So you got to get a little bit more creative with your actual plot structure. Maybe you start from in the future, and then you work your way back or something. You have to be a little bit more creative on the way that you structure the film so that it doesn't just match Marvel template number 2. You gotta go a little bit further. So I do agree with that. Even though you're following the source material, you wanna be as close to the source as possible. You still got to get a little creative in terms of how you tell it
in certain areas. Otherwise, again, because
Yep, I agree.
Otherwise, after Endgame, it's going to be really hard for them to be like...
Tier 2 of Marvel, they definitely need to try to find a different way to do origin stories, or maybe even like not do an origin story and just do like a duo. You know, you do a 2-person film, not a versus film like Batman versus Superman, but
like
a duo,
an Ant-Man Wasp,
working together, and you start with that.
Because I mean, if you think about it too, like before they had everything set in stone, the first like 6 films was Iron Man, and then something else, and Iron Man 2, and then something else, and Captain America, and then Avengers, and then after that Thor, and then after that Iron Man 3. It's like if you think about it, like they knocked 3 Iron Man films out, so it's kind of like they didn't really have a plan. Like until they got to like around Avengers, it's like, all right, now we're gonna have a plan.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they would have started doing like Doctor Strange and all this other shit earlier instead of waiting till the end to kind of tack it on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if you think about it, did we really need 3 Iron Mans out of like the first 10 films?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that they definitely need to take a strong look at the structure of tier 2 of the Marvel franchise and go from there, because that's really going to be a make or break. You know, if tier 2 is more of the same, I don't know that it can sustain itself.
Do they own the rights to Fantastic Four yet or no?
That's really in limbo. There's actually, they just announced Noah Hawley, who writes the Legion FX series based on the X-Men character. He wrote a Doctor Doom story for film, because and it's really in limbo right now whether they can even do that film.
Because I don't know if they own. Because like I said, I don't know if they own it or if Fox still owns it.
Yeah, it's definitely in limbo. Although Disney did buy Fox. So
did they?
Yeah. So
they can do it then.
I think they can, but I'm not sure.
If they bought 20th Century Fox, who held the rights to X-Men and
I think that they can. If I saw the news correctly, but I just know that the Doctor Doom movie is stalled. So
as much as I would like to see a well-made Fantastic Four film after being burned 3 times, wouldn't you just be like, don't even bother?
Yeah. If anybody's going to make a pretty good one, it's Noah Hawley, because I really love his Legion series. So I think that would be one of the writers who could do a more creative origin story for those characters.
But again, like I said, like it's within like 20 years, just 4 different Fantastic Four films that are like kind of... I mean, because if you think about it, like where do they go after Thanos as the big bad? Be like Galactus or something, right?
Right. So
you'd have to like introduce the Fantastic Four so you can introduce Silver Surfer and.
I don't know.
I'm just thinking.
We'll have to. Well, I guess we'll see. All right, so we're gonna be off next week, and then we're gonna be back with a new episode, and we really have a filler, what I'll call a filler episode, before we have to do Shazam. So
the other Captain Marvel,
the other type of Captain Marvel,
the original Captain Marvel.
So I'm not really sure what we're gonna do in 2 weeks. But the other thing is, because of the schedule of movies that are coming out, you're gonna get a wham ba bam and then a wham ba bam, because you're gonna get not next week, but the week after's episode. Then you're gonna get Shazam the week after that. Then there's going to be a break. Then you're going to get a filler episode. Then you're going to get Endgame. So there's like double whammies all over the place.
I really think for Endgame, we should make the time to do the review right after.
Yeah.
To sum up like what we're thinking then and kind of just get everything.
You can try it. It's hard. It's hard because we got to go on a Sunday and then I got to go to work.
Yeah, but you don't have to get up that early. I have to get up super early.
Yeah. I don't know what we're doing next time though.
But I think Endgame would lend itself to
You want to spend 3 hours in the movie and then you want to go and do another hour and a half show?
I'm saying if we like went straight out of the theater, it'd be longer than that. It'd be Terminator Genesis levels of happiness.
Yep.
Just think that was episode 2.
All right. So do you know what you want to do next week? Do you have any?
No, we'll think it out.
Yeah, we're just gonna have to think about it.
I don't know if I want to subject you to House of the Dead yet.
Come up with a plan.
If we need a nice Uva Bowl film.
Thank you for listening. You can find us on Podbean, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, anywhere you can find a podcast. You can subscribe and leave us a nice review. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/Blood and Black Rum Podcast. We're on Twitter @BloodandBlackRum. We have an email address at bloodandblackrumpodcast@gmail.com, which you can write to us, let us know what films you want us to cover. And other than that, you can donate to us on our Patreon page, patreon.com/bloodandblackrumpodcast. If you like what we're doing, you want to see us do more, donate to us, and it helps fund the podcast. So thank you very much if you do want to donate monthly. Other than that, we'll be back in 2 weeks with a new episode, and we hope you enjoyed this one.
Take care.